Sean Diddy Combs trial, starting with the music mogul's former assistant, Capricorn Clark, taking the stand.
The testimony today was regarding the alleged break-in at Kid Cudi's house, the alleged firebombing of his car. I've said it before, I said it again. Kid Cudi, very important witness in this case to establish some of the underlying crime.
Why would we need a 50-foot bed?
I mean, TD Jakes ain't small. I'm just saying. If it's a group thing, it's a group thing. You gotta think about, you got Rick Ross, you got Khaled, we talk about heavy hits.
Did Johnny Depp just drop the most jaw-dropping testimony of the year, live in court? Before we start, hit that like button, seriously, because you do not want to miss a single detail. It was day 17 of the federal trial against Sean Diddy Combs, and everyone expected a routine witness. Then the judge said, "Call your next witness, Mr. Braverman," and out walked Johnny Depp. Nobody saw it coming. His appearance was sealed until the last second. His name wasn't on any published list. Yet there he was, in worn leather boots and a dark coat, ready to spill secrets no one knew he had.
Than what he or she said in a documentary, or leaves out a detail, or adds a detail that they didn't say in the documentary, then that's absolutely fair game for cross-examination. And I assume in this case...
When asked how many times he'd met Diddy, Depp deadpanned, once. But that was enough to see the darkness underneath. He leaned forward in that witness chair, voice shaking but words sharp. "I'm not here because of what he did to me. I'm here because of what he did to them." In the blink of an eye, Depp painted a chilling picture of Hollywood's hidden underbelly, masked parties, forced cleansing baths, and NDAs so monstrous they crushed careers overnight. Imagine being forced to strip in front of strangers, or signing away your silence under threat of being erased from Hollywood's most coveted circles.
Federal prosecutors allege Combs used his power and wealth to coerce and exploit alleged victims for decades. If convicted, Combs would be spending the rest of his life.
Depp described Diddy's clandestine celebration nights, where guests handed in their phones at the door, donned masks, and signed NDAs longer than movie scripts. Those NDAs were not for privacy. They were tools of psychological control. Leave early and you risked blacklisting or worse. Celebrities believed it was all a playful Eyes Wide Shut parody until they realized it was anything but a joke. Friends he loved, musicians he'd shared stages with, actors who adored him, Depp had watched them change after getting close to Diddy. Some lost careers, others vanished altogether. An actor friend told him in 2014 about attending one of these nights. It started with champagne, then phones were locked away, then masks. They thought it was theater at first, but soon realized it was real. Contracts were signed under duress, and anyone who tried to leave early paid a heavy price. Depp's voice grew colder as he described a pop singer who called him in tears after attending one event. "I feel like I just sold something I didn't agree to give up," she said. And the next day, she vanished from the charts. Her second album never saw the light of day.
Combs allegedly planned and controlled the sex performances, which he called freak-offs, and he often electronically recorded them. The freak-offs sometimes lasted days at a time.
Depp admitted he stayed quiet out of fear. Fear not of Diddy himself, but of what happens when you shine a light on the rot beneath Hollywood's carpet. "This system doesn't protect truth-tellers," he said. "It buries them." He revealed that he'd seen NDAs longer than movie scripts, off-hour payouts in the dead of night, assistants threatened, managers disappearing, and careers dying in silence. "This isn't about one man's empire," he declared. "It's about an empire built on fear." Then came the chilling details. These gatherings were not parties. They were orchestrated rituals disguised as elite social events, always behind closed doors, always invitation only, and always ending in silence. Guests handed over their phones upon entry so no evidence could leave. They signed documents so restrictive that few could ever escape unscathed. People whispered that participants were recorded not for blackmail at first, but to test loyalty. And later, those recordings were weaponized. Depp went on to describe hearing about the baths, something called cleansing or flavor baptism. Celebrities, A-listers, stripped down, forced to sit in hot water while handlers watched and music played in the background. No one spoke of it the next day, but their eyes gave it all away. Something sacred had been taken from them. Anyone who missed the next gathering was labeled difficult. Declined too many times, and your name stopped getting mentioned in the rooms that mattered. They had the footage, the audio, the witnesses, all the tools needed to ruin you or worse. Depp admitted he kept his distance, protecting the friends still fighting to forget.
What about the documentaries and stuff like that that have been put out about him and some of the allegations against him, and people essentially co-signing on what he's being accused of because they're highlighting his behavior?
He also revealed he'd only met Diddy face-to-face once, in 2009 at a Beverly Hills film premiere after-party. Depp was there just to say a quick hello, but the energy was off. People weren't just partying, they were posturing, watching each other like chess pieces. In the middle of it all, Diddy stood almost regal, quietly commanding the room. Depp approached, and Diddy looked him in the eye and said, "You've been invited, but you never come." Depp asked, "Come to what?" And Diddy just smiled, an unwelcoming, predatory smile, leaned in and whispered, "Some rooms you only enter once. Make it count." Then he walked off, leaving Depp confused. It wasn't until years later that Depp understood the meaning. Compliance was mandatory, refusal painted you as an outsider. After that night, mutual acquaintances reached out to Depp more aggressively. Exclusive roles, private performances, strange business opportunities tied to Diddy's network. But there was always a catch. Attend the next party, be seen. Depp refused, and slowly the calls stopped. Projects fell through, meetings got canceled, directors he'd known for years suddenly acted distant. He confronted one of Diddy's closest industry allies asking, "Are you freezing me out?" The response, "You know how it works, Johnny. You made your choice." That single meeting told him everything he needed to know. Refusing that world meant sacrificing everything.
I've had to turn down $50 million 4 times. 4 times. Just to protect my integrity and that virgin hole I was telling you about. Right?
Depp then locked eyes with Diddy and laid out a chilling picture of Hollywood's power brokers orbiting around one man's invitation list. Household names, global icons, politicians, media giants, each tied together by a silent contract. He described a veteran director confessing that he once walked into a Diddy estate and saw over 40 celebrities seated in a silent circle, each holding a candle. It wasn't a game or a seance. It was a silent oath to provide allegiance, loyalty, and silence in exchange for power. When asked what kind of contract that was, Depp shrugged. You weren't signing paper. You were offering yourself, your allegiance, your silence. From then on, you knew things, and knowing came with a cost. He recalled a 2015 Grammy after-party where he overheard 2 high-profile producers arguing about a leaked clip from one of Diddy's gatherings. One said, "If this gets out, we're done." All of us. The other replied, "Then we find out who's leaking and make them disappear." They weren't being metaphorical. Depp's eyes bored into the jury as he explained, these parties weren't just indulgence, they were leverage. If you stepped out of line, they had footage, audio, witnesses. Everything needed to ruin you, or worse. The stories infiltrated every major sector of entertainment. Actors, makeup artists, stylists, all with the same invitations, the same pressure, always tied back to Diddy's name. When asked why none of these people came forward, Depp's expression turned mournful. Because they're trapped, and because some of them started to like the trap. Fame does that. It numbs you, but not me, not anymore.
You're gonna testify. I won't even say his name. He is an evil being, and is going to pay.
Then he picked up a file full of printed pages, transcripts, and messages from people too scared, too compromised, or too bought to testify. One unnamed actor. I was supposed to go. They told me the contract was for brand protection. Then they took my phone. They told me to strip. I never went back. A former music executive. Every time someone got too big, Diddy brought them in closer. Then he used what he had on them. Footage, recordings, rumors. Nobody left clean. Depp read those messages aloud, emphasizing that this wasn't just about parties or baths. It was about control, psychological warfare disguised as lifestyle, a culture where acceptance meant forfeiting your soul. He nodded when asked if he'd ever witnessed someone trying to leave the circle. Yes, a singer. She tried to break her contract, tried to go public. Within a month, she was labeled crazy, lost her label. Her team abandoned her. She was never seen on a red carpet again. Depp said friends had disappeared after one party, not dead, but erased. No more calls, no more deals, like they'd never existed. That's what he built, Depp told the jury. Not just an empire, but a vacuum. You go in, and unless you play the game, you vanish.
Cassie's been answering questions from Sean Diddy Combs' defense lawyers all day. Their job? To pick holes in the testimony she gave over the 2 days at the beginning of the week.
The scariest part, he thundered, wasn't even the parties. It was the constellation of names orbiting them. Untouchable household legends whose faces graced every billboard. Globe-straddling icons whose slightest nod could send markets surging. Politicians so powerful that mere whispers of their displeasure could curl the hairs on a judge's neck. Media moguls whose pens wove the fates of entire industries. All of them, he insisted, were bound by a single invisible invitation list. Depp painted it as if it were a dark ledger of souls, a hellish registry scribbled in venomous ink that determined who was inside the sanctum and who was doomed to vanish. He recounted how, the instant he refused that fateful invitation from Diddy back in 2009, the machinery of retribution whirred to life in slow motion. At first, it was so subtle that only someone steeped in Hollywood lore could notice. A whispered cancellation here, an unexplained scheduling conflict there. But soon it grew impossible to ignore. Projects evaporated as though cursed. Roles he'd been in serious talks for one day, gone without explanation the next. Directors he'd courted for years who once greeted him like a brother suddenly offered nothing but hollow pleasantries and forced smiles, as if he carried a contagious affliction. Meetings he'd penciled in weeks in advance were erased without a trace, replaced by cryptic emails that simply said, "We've moved in another direction." It was as though his very name had been scrubbed from every black book, every VIP Rolodex, every social circle that mattered. He mimicked their hushed tones in a chilling whisper that rippled through the courtroom. "You know how it works, Johnny. You made your choice." With each word, the temperature in the room seemed to drop. Then, in a gesture that felt heavier than Thor's hammer crashing to the ground, Depp hurled the ebony envelope onto the courtroom table. Even from the back row, the jury could feel the impact, as if the envelope itself lodged a tremor in the oak surface. It was the final summons from Diddy, the thing that sealed his fate in Hollywood's dark underworld. The card was a study in ominous elegance, blacker than a moonless night, etched in molten silver that glinted like a blade, and crowned with a gold emblem so intricately embossed it resembled a Byzantine seal of damnation. No address, no event name, no cryptic tagline, just a single line of text. "You're invited, Friday." Below it, in tiny type that seemed to crawl off the card, was a phone number and the date. The entire effect was like holding the ticket to a secret ceremony of shadows, promising glamour but guaranteeing entrapment. Depp described how the very act of touching that card had sent a chill surging down his spine, a visceral, bone-deep cold that made his breath catch. "Something inside me said, if you go through that door, you'll never step back into the light again," he confided, voice low and trembling. He admitted he never dialed the number, never RSPV'd. Instead, he tucked that card away as though preserving a relic from another world, a constant, uncomfortable reminder of how close he'd come to being swallowed whole by that infernal circle. Even now, he said, merely looking at it could conjure the scent of damp secrecy and the metallic tang of fear. The jury stared, mouths slightly agape, as if the envelope itself had sprung to life and cast a spell over them. Cameras zoomed in, capturing every rivulet of sweat on his brow, every flicker of disbelief in the onlooker's eyes. He lifted the envelope again, this time with a deliberate slowness, as if each millimeter of rays was a struggle against gravitational forces unseen, and fixed the room with a stare so intense it felt like laser beams slicing through the air. "There's a roster somewhere," he announced, voice echoing off the paneled walls in a way that made hearts pound. Maybe it's scrawled in invisible ink on some backroom ledger. Maybe it only exists in someone's burning memory, etched there by fear. But it's real. A ledger of those who play the game, and those who vanish without a trace. I've languished on the wrong side of that ledger for years. His eyes glistened with an otherworldly sheen, part resignation, part smoldering defiance, as he pivoted to address the network of cameras broadcasting his every word to millions. The silence in the courtroom tightened like a coil. "If this trial means anything," he declared, tone measuring out each syllable as if sentencing the audience to lifelong insomnia, "let it be this. You don't have to answer the summons. You don't have to surrender your fear to them. You don't have to give them the power to decide whether you live under a spotlight or are erased into darkness." He paused, a pregnant moment that stretched so long the air itself seemed to catch its breath, before rising from his seat as though drawn upward by an invisible magnet. With each step toward the judge's bench, the courtroom floorboards seemed to hum, as though recognizing a moment of reckoning. His voice remained unwavering and clear, his gaze unflinching, as if he were staring down the very ghosts of Hollywood's hidden hierarchies. Even the judge, normally a bastion of stoic formality, leaned forward, eyebrows knitting and a rare glimpse of unease. Depp's final words hammered home with the force of an avalanche. "This is not just about lip service or hollow promises. This is about dismantling a fortress built upon silence, fear, and the fragile illusion of untouchability. Because let me tell you something, no kingdom, not even one draped in platinum chains and gilded lies, is immune to collapse. Not when the truth comes crashing through the gates demanding to be heard. He let those words linger like the echo of a gavel strike in an empty hall. Then, without another glance, he turned on his heel and strode away, each step ringing out like a drum at a funeral procession. As he passed through the double doors, the courtroom remained frozen, spectators scarcely daring to breathe. The heavy oak paneling seemed to pulse with the aftershocks of his testimony, and the faint hum of concealed cameras continued to capture every terrified gasp and every quivering lip. For a moment, it felt as if the entire world had stopped, suspended in a tableau of shock and awe. And though Depp had exited the room, the phantom weight of that envelope and everything it symbolized hung in the stale air, a promise of secrets yet to be unearthed, and a challenge to anyone brave enough to refuse the invitation.
Got a bad financial incentive. And so, look, so much of this just comes down to the jurors are going to be sitting feet away from her. I mean, I've been in these courtrooms. They're going to be 4 feet away from her.
Chapter 9, Depp's final plea. This wasn't just testimony anymore, it was a reckoning. The industry teaches you early. You don't burn bridges, you don't rattle cages, and above all, you don't speak against the king. Because if you do, you disappear. Not physically always, but slowly, from the inside out. They take your phone calls, your press, your financing, until all you are is a rumor of what used to be. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a faded photograph, curled at the edges. This was taken in 2004 at a rooftop party in Cannes. This kid, he's gone now. Not dead, just gone. After that night, he stopped talking to people, stopped showing up. I saw him 2 years later working a bar in Detroit. He looked like he had seen something he couldn't unsee. Depp placed the photo down gently. They say time heals everything, but silence doesn't. Silence just digs the wound deeper. That's what this industry has done. And Diddy, you turned silence into a business model. The judge asked if he had anything else to add. Depp nodded. There are 2 kinds of survivors. Those who make peace with the past and those who promise the past they'll never let it happen again. He turned to the courtroom gallery, reporters, fans, onlookers, maybe even a few victims sitting quietly uncertain. I'm not here for revenge. I'm here to break the spell. The one that says this is normal, that this is what success looks like, that to shine, you must first bleed. And with that, he walked down from the stand, each step echoing like a drumbeat at a funeral procession. Just before leaving, he turned back one last time to Diddy. Their eyes met, but this time Depp didn't need to stare him down. The silence did it for him, and the courtroom.